Agora, boa tarde de novo a todas e todos. O Departamento e o Programa de Pós-Graduação em Sociologia da Universidade de São Paulo têm a honra de receber hoje a professora Patricia Hill Collins, que proferirá a conferência sobre desafios contemporâneos e novas perspectivas para o pensamento feminista negro. Nossa convidada graduou-se em 69 pela Universidade de Brandeis, obteve um mestrado em 70 pela Universidade de Harvard e se doutorou em 84 pela Universidade de Brandeis. Entre 76 e 80, Patrícia dirigiu o African American Center da Tufts University. Em 82, se engajou no Departamento de African American Studies da Universidade de Cincinnati, onde ficou por 23 anos e onde chegou a dirigir esse departamento durante um período de quase 5 anos. Em 2005, se integrou à Universidade de Maryland, onde hoje ela é professora emérita. Em 2009, ela foi eleita a 100ª presidente da American Sociological Association, a mais importante associação acadêmica de sociólogos no mundo norte-americano e das mais importantes no mundo de língua inglesa. E foi a primeira afro-americana a ocupar essa posição. Eu acho que de todos nós que estamos aqui, provavelmente muitos, não sei se a maioria, mas uma boa parte, acompanha, atraído as ideias de Patrícia por uma novidade pioneira que data do 86, que é um texto que está traduzido para o português, eu acho que pelo pessoal da SOF, inclusive, ou não sei se do SOS Corpo, né? Learning from the Outsider Within, né? Que foi originalmente publicado pela Social Problems. Apenas 4 anos depois aparece o livro que agora, nessa viagem, Patrícia lança no Brasil, né? O Black Feminist Thought, Knowledge, Consciousness and Politics of Empowerment, que foi um livro que arrebatou inúmeros prêmios na academia norte-americana. Né? Esse livro ganhou o Jesse Bernard, que é um prêmio muito importante da American Sociological Association, ganhou o prêmio C. Wright Mills, ganhou o prêmio da Associação das Mulheres em Psicologia, o prêmio das Historiadoras Negras. Né? Ele está traduzido agora em português pela Boitempo e ele vai ser o ponto de partida para a reflexão da professora Patricia Collins hoje, onde ela vai explorar desafios contemporâneos e novas perspectivas para o pensamento feminista negro. Né? Mas a agenda de produção e de trabalho da professora é bem mais vasta. Né? Ela tratou o tema da sexualidade num livro extremamente importante chamado Black Sexual Politics, African Americans, Gender and the New Racism, em 2004, e que foi novamente premiada por isso pela American Sociological Association em 2007. Além disso, ela se dedicou a refletir sobre o tema da justiça social e empoderamento em Fighting Words, Black Women and the Struggle for Justice, do longínquo 1998, para a gente ver como o tema estava lá cultivado. Né? E um lado bem interessante para nós que atuamos na universidade na formação, né? Tem na carreira dela um compromisso importante em tornar acessível ao ensino esse tipo de formulação teórica, esse pensamento crítico sobre raça e desigualdades, né? Que se assenta nessa perspectiva interseccional em torno da qual ela ficou bastante conhecida. E isso se expressou em 2 antologias importantes que ela editou, coeditou, né? Com esse espírito. Uma bem cedo, em 92, de muito sucesso, sucessivas reedições, chamada Race, Class and Gender, em colaboração com Margaret Anderson, e outra já bastante posterior, em 2010, coeditada com John Solomons, que sai como Sage Handbook of Race and Ethnic Studies. Tá? O desdobramento dessa agenda deu lugar a uma sequência de outras publicações que são marcantes no trabalho intelectual e no debate intelectual desse campo. Né? As novas formas de racismo e as maneiras de confrontar essas novas formas de racismo, com um olhar especial para a perspectiva dos jovens, por exemplo, está no 2006, no From Black Power to Hip Hop, Racism, Nationalism and Feminism. Mas ela explorou também os elos entre a educação pública e a democracia, né? Um tema que hoje eu acho que nos interessa imensamente no Brasil, né? Num livro de 2009, que se intitula Another Kind of Public Education, Race, the Media, Schools and Democratic Possibilities. Bem assim, as relações contraditórias que estabelecemos, academia com o que está na rua, com os movimentos sociais, entre intelectuais e movimentos, tematizadas em On Intellectual Activism, publicado em 2012. Tá? No ano que corre, 2019, Patricia Collins nos deu de presente um novo livro, que se intitula Intersectionality as Critical Social Theory. Qual a motivação? Responder, como ela mesma nos diz, ao introduzir o livro, a necessidade de explorar os paralelos existentes entre os desafios confrontados por ativistas intelectuais que contribuíram para a emergência da noção de interseccionalidade e aqueles desafios que hoje temos pela frente, abrindo novas perspectivas para o pensamento feminista negro enquanto teoria social crítica. Vimos, assim, que, ao tempo em que esses desafios se renovavam, a reflexão intelectual de Patricia Collins ganhava contornos que mais e mais instigavam seus leitores e sua audiência. A presença entre nós hoje de Patricia Hill Collins se deve a um esforço conjunto, no qual o Departamento e o Programa de Pós-Graduação em Sociologia contaram com apoios importantes de parceiros que nos foram cruciais. O primeiro deles, a ANPED, Associação Nacional de Pós-Graduação em Pesquisa em Educação. O segundo, a Universidade Federal de São Carlos, campus Sorocaba, através do seu Departamento de Ciências Humanas e Educação. Inestimável apoio nós obtivemos também da SOF, Sempre Viva Organização Feminista, sem contar a Editora Boitempo, a Ação Educativa e o SEBRAP, Centro Brasileiro de Análise e Planejamento. Por trás das instituições e de suas logomarcas, nós que militamos pelo reconhecimento dos indivíduos e de sua agência, né, temos nomes de pessoas, né, pessoas que movem essas instituições, e seria injusto não deixar registrado o nosso agradecimento muito especial ao abrir esse evento à professora Maria Carla Corrochano, da Universidade Federal de São Carlos, campus de Sorocaba, a Miriam Nobre e Renata Moreno, da Sempre Viva Organização Feminista, que também estão em algum lugar por aí, a professora Helena Irata, do Crespá CNRS, professora visitante na Sociologia da USP, a coordenação do programa de pós-graduação em Sociologia do nosso departamento, nas pessoas da coordenadora, a professora Ana Paula Rei, que por razão de saúde não está aqui, e da vice-coordenadora, a professora Márcia Lima, que aqui está no meu lado esquerdo, e ao chefe do Departamento de Sociologia da Universidade, o professor Rui Braga, para não dizer que não falamos de flores, o único homem nessa lista. Um agradecimento muito especial a um agradecimento muito especial às nossas duas intérpretes, que nós não estamos vendo, mas que felizmente nos veem e nos ouvem, e que tornam possível a participação de uma quantidade ainda maior de pessoas nesse diálogo. Carol Brigulho e Júlia Di Giovanni. Com a palavra, a professora Patricia Collins. Muito bem-vinda entre nós.
Oi. Obrigada.
That's it.
That's it. Now we move on to English, for me at least. Again, thank you so much for this introduction. It was wonderful. As you can see, many people were responsible for getting me here. And I'm not sure whether that means that if I'm terrible, none of them has to take all of the blame. So, today, I have in fact done all of that work. I mean, it's really amazing to me that I have been writing as long as I have been writing, publishing as long as I have been publishing, and thinking about these issues of social justice for so long, starting with the experiences of Black women and carrying those experiences throughout my career. I consider the lives of Black women to be very important, not secondary, not marginal, not information to be added into other people's theories, but instead a set of ideas and experiences that might inform bigger questions. I approach Black feminist thought as one discourse among many, one that is very important to me, but that has implications beyond Black feminist thought. Now, are we feeling serious today? Are we feeling, don't move around too much. This is what I want to say to you. We cannot create heat, all right? So those of you who wiggle in your seats, try not to wiggle too much. We cannot create heat, but we can create heat in terms of how we approach this material. I've brought a PowerPoint with me today on Black feminist thought, contemporary challenges, and new directions. And on this first slide that you can see, I have put the covers of both of my books. The first book that you see is Black Feminist Thought, the way it looked in 1990, the original publication. And there you see Black Feminist Thought, great big letters. My students said to me, Dr. Collins, it's really hard for us to carry this out in public because people keep coming up to us and asking us, what is that? I think the publisher put that cover on there for that reason. Because very often, people would come up to my students and say, I hate that Black feminist thought. And they would say, well, what do you mean? Have you read the book? And they would say, no, I haven't read the book, but I know I hate it. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could just walk past all of those books that are assigned to you and know what's in them without reading them? But it speaks to the distance that Black feminist thought has traveled from a time when to have the words Black feminist and thought on the cover of the book would generate that type of reaction. Now, it still may do that in some settings, but not always. Sir, I see you fanning back there. Don't do that. Yes, that means you're making heat, all right? I'm just kidding you. But it does say that I can see you, all right? Everybody knows this, right? You think you're one of a crowd? I can see you. Now, on the other side of that slide, you see the cover of the Portuguese translation of Black feminist thought, which took 30 years to get to this point. So I am thrilled, I'm absolutely thrilled that this book has been translated into Portuguese so that it is available to those of you who wish to read it in Portuguese and share it in Portuguese. So shall we get started? Sim? Okay. There are two parts to my talk. This is the overview. In part one, I'll be talking about core themes of Black feminism. I do not assume that everybody knows what Black feminism is. So what I'm going to do is just do a quick set of ideas that give you the flavor of this discourse. In the second part of my presentation, Challenges and New Directions, I will be focusing on political challenges, the challenges of now. There I will be sketching out a more robust understanding of politics that I think comes from Black feminist thought. I welcome your questions and comments after the presentation, but I'm going to go through it to get us through from beginning to end. Part 1, core themes of Black feminism. And this is the basis of what I was working on. One core theme, social justice as the ethical core of Black feminism. Now, this may seem obvious to you today, and it may seem obvious in the context of Brazil, where social justice is so visible. But when you think about the United States, where for Black women to claim a discourse for themselves that had social justice at the center, and that meant social justice for Black women, not for everyone else first, not for white women first, or white men first, or Black men first, or everybody else first. The whole notion of a social justice that was rationed out according to who you were was unacceptable. And to claim we need a discourse where social justice is at the heart, not just for Black women, but especially for Black women. This was very difficult for many people to understand. They could not understand why Black women would not be satisfied with waiting for someone else to plead their case. But in fact, social justice was central. The basic idea here is this: no one's freedom can be based on someone else's subordination. If you think you are free, and what makes you free is someone else's subordination, you are part of a system of social injustice. That becomes more visible to people who are on the bottom, that type of parsing out of ideas and justice. The second idea would be the idea of intersectionality. And here I say intersectionality as an analytical framework. Very quickly, it's a similar idea. If you are a Black woman, you will not be free just through anti-racist politics. That's not going to be enough. If you are a Black woman, you will not be free just through gender politics. That will not be enough. Because what your subordination is structured by is the intersection of racism and sexism, the intersection of class and race, the intersection of sexuality, especially homophobia and heterosexism. All of that is there in your life. So if you are really going to push forward with a social justice agenda, you have to think about these intersections. We did not have this term, intersectionality, until the 1990s. But the ideas themselves preceded the 1990s. A third idea that is quite central to Black feminism and that we don't talk about enough is the whole concept of hope. 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 The belief that change is possible. Why would you have a discourse of Black feminism or Black feminist thought? Why would you have a Black feminist politics that is pushing for social justice, that is organized around these ideas of intersectionality as its intellectual core, without some sense that hope of change is possible? Now, most of you are in the academy, is that right? we're sitting here in a prestigious institution of higher education. So many of my colleagues in the academy are depressing. They are. They're gloomy. They walk around all the time talking about oppression is so total. It's so hegemonic. It's so awful. And they shake their heads when they look at black women. Oh, that's so bad for you. And they sell us, prepare for us, theories and studies that teach us how oppressed we really are. I used to teach that class. I taught for 10 weeks my racism class. Racism is bad. Racism is here. Racism is in the schools. It's in the streets. It's in your mind. It's everywhere. And by the end of the class, my students had amazing analysis. But they were losing hope because they said to me, Dr. Collins, I feel worse now than when I started your class. Now, this was not the effect I was going for, all right? Because I don't feel I have the luxury to do that kind of social theory. I cannot be nihilistic and hope and find people to share that with me because I don't feel privileged. Privilege can create space for some of our thinkers to say, the world is so bad, it's getting worse, this, that, and the other. Now, they may be right. They may be right on one level, but that is not, to me, what black women and similar groups who are trying to empower themselves need. The notion of looking for where is the hope. Do we say that black women are misguided? That they're simply stupid because they're hoping for something that will never happen? Or do we say that hope lies at the center of all politics, no matter how far in the future the victory may come? I have decided to put hope in my talks. And perhaps we need to talk a little bit more about hope at this particular political moment. That's known as a pause, where you fill in what I might mean by this particular political moment. But I may come back to that later on. And finally, what there is in black feminist thought and black feminism is a commitment to political action. This is not just ideas. Black feminist thought is not just another set of ideas to explain the world. It's a set of ideas that people use to try and change the world. And through their actions, they get a better sense of social justice and what that might mean. They get a deeper sense of intersectionality and what that might mean. And they understand the nature of hope. What's happening? Is anything going on behind me I should know about?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, that's okay. We needed a break anyhow. Okay, are we back? All right. So political action, however, this is what I will be talking about a bit more throughout the talk. You notice that I have 3 words there. Yeah, 4, actually. Flexible. Political action can't just be one program always. This is the way we do politics, no matter what. Flexibility is extremely important during difficult times and good times. Strategic. It has to be thoughtful, having multiple ways of getting something done. There is this expression in black culture, black American culture, to make a way out of no way. And that fundamentally means that if a door closes in your face, you make another way from that no way. You stay with it until you find a way. So flexibility and being strategic is important there. Comprehensive, think big. Just don't think small. Think big. And long term. That political action is not just this week, this month, next year. It's a lifelong commitment. So you might want to ask yourself, to what are you committed for your entire life? Are you committed to ideas? Are you committed to people? Is it both? What is it? This kind of work is not just shopping for theory or shopping for what is chic or in. It is not easy. It involves risk, but it involves so much joy when successes occur. And I want to talk a bit about more about that in a few minutes. But now to move along. That was my slide to put it all up there. Three examples, just to put some teeth into these ideas. You're looking at a photograph of Ida Wells Barnett. Ida Wells Barnett was an anti-lynching Ida Wells Barnett. And what we have on the title is A Passion for Justice, which is the name of her autobiography. Now, Ida Wells Barnett, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, was trying to live her life as a black woman during a period of time when doors were closing rapidly. And then 3 of her friends were lynched. They hadn't done anything wrong. They were black men who were running a store, and they were simply competing with white businesses, and they were lynched. And the going story, the dominant discourse about lynching at that time was that black men were brutes, they were beasts, they were violent, and they lusted for white women. And that's why some of them had to be contained. Ida Wells Barnett knew that that particular piece of evidence or that perspective was simply wrong. And she could have been upset about it. Well, she was upset. She could have gone to her house and started drinking, as do many people who are confronted by these types of challenges. She could have gotten depressed, which she probably did on certain days when confronted with these challenges. But she decided to use the power of her pen and her voice to challenge these practices. She became a really powerful anti-lynching advocate. She was opposed to it, and she was an irritant in the side of many, many people, including some black men who didn't want her to talk about this particular issue. What you see was a strong position against social injustice by becoming an anti-lynching activist. You also see that I put up here intersectional analysis. Basically, her argument about lynching, race, gender, and sexuality was extremely provocative for that time, when she had the audacity to say that some sexual relations between black men and white women were consensual. Oh, that was not going to fly in America at that point in time, because it was hard to imagine white women as sexual beings, and certainly sexual beings who would be interested in black men. Oh, Ida Wells Barnett had an analysis of how lynching and violence was central to keeping inequality going. She was provocative. But she didn't just write about this and speak about all this. She was an activist. She joined national organizations, but she also, lesser known about her, worked in Chicago. She was a community leader in the city of Chicago. The non-glamorous grassroots politics that I'll be talking about a little later. Are you doing okay? Is this too heavy duty for you? Oh, how you doing? You doing okay? Come on now, don't lie to me. You lying? I can tell. Okay. We're going to move on to the next slide. This slide would be the whole notion of intersectionality in a nutshell. And the picture that I bring to you, the title is June Jordan's Intersectionality, Race, Gender, and Sexuality. June Jordan is a wonderful essayist and poet who published provocative work in the late 1900s. And one thing about June Jordan is that I pulled this quote because it's a quote about freedom and the indivisibility of struggles. Now, this quote came from a certain place. June Jordan was doing a residency, I believe at Berkeley, and one day the black students came into her office and they said, "We're having a march and a rally tomorrow. Can you come?" She went to that march and rally, and she found just black students there. And then she was approached by the gay lesbian students who said, "We're having a march and a rally tomorrow. Can you come?" And she went to that march and rally and discovered there were no black people, but there were plenty of gay lesbian folk who were white. And she said, this makes no sense, because here is race and here is sexuality, and they appear to be similar struggles, and yet neither is supporting the other. This is the quote that comes from the essay that she wrote about that particular event. She says, "Freedom is indivisible, or it is nothing at all besides sloganeering and temporary, short-sighted, and short-lived advancement for a few." Well, she's saying a lot there. If you just want to throw a slogan that you're for black feminism, or a slogan that you're for gay lesbian, or you're a slogan, you're just serving your own interests. Freedom is indivisible, people. She's writing to black students and gay lesbian students at this point, but she's making a bigger point that carries into the analysis of intersectionality. She continues, freedom is indivisible, and either we are working for freedom, we, or you are working for the sense of your self-interests, and I am working for mine. Now, this, to me, is a very powerful set of ideas for black women to express, because everybody wants black women as part of their movement. How can we get, Dr. Collins, you notice that I have a tendency to make fun of people, right? Right. The drama in me just comes out. I'm sorry. All right. Dr. Collins, how can we get black women to come to our meeting? We just need the black women. And I want to say, do you ever try and go to other things that black women support? Not the black women meetings about black women's issues, but the issues that black women support. For example, I'll be talking about Black Lives Matter a bit later on in this presentation. Would you consider going to a Black Lives Matter event to say, I think Black Lives Matter even though I am not a black person? Ooh. Or I would go to a feminist meeting to support women's issues even though I am not a woman. That big women's march after the Trump inauguration was very much about a lot of that. All right? I saw some cool dudes there, okay? Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Did cool dudes translate into Portuguese? How do you translate that? All right, maybe it doesn't translate. You'll have to figure that out and tell me later. All right. But this is what she says about intersectionality. This is the heart of the concept. All right? And we can talk about the various categories. We can talk about which categories we can go. But this is fundamentally what it is if you're thinking social justice, and if you're hopeful, and if you're politically active. And my third example, before I move on, is the legacy of Ella Baker. Many people do not know about Ella Baker. I put up here the legacy of Ella Baker, Hope for the Future. Ella Baker was a black woman who in the 50s and the 60s worked in the civil rights movement. She was not Martin Luther King. How many of you have heard of Martin Luther King? Of course you have. And if you haven't, that's okay. Put your hand up anyhow. We won't shame you. That could be you. It's okay. But there are many, many, many people who were central to black freedom struggle who remain nameless or have remained nameless. And one thing that black feminism has done has been to recover and recoup and tell the stories of these people. Now, Ella Baker is one such person. This is a picture of her on the top, as she looked. And on the bottom, I've put up the cover of a very important book, Ella Baker and the Black Freedom Movement, written by Barbara Ransby, who is a historian who spent a decade researching this book. Those of you who are serious scholars and you realize what's at stake, it's very important to get it right, or the best that you can do. And this is that kind of book. But I'm bringing Ella Baker to you because she didn't just talk the talk of social justice. She did not just talk the talk of intersectionality. There are a lot of people running around the academy these days saying, I am intersectional. I believe in intersectionality. I've published intersectionality. Can I tell you about my study in intersectionality? It's very popular right now. It must be the new in color for the season for fashion. I don't know. But when I say she walked the walk, her inclusive politics Baker's inclusive politics aimed to empower women, young people, and poor people as part of the black freedom struggle. She went and talked to these groups and brought them in because during the time that she was working, black men, many of whom were middle class, were running the movement. They were fine men. There was really nothing wrong with them, but they didn't have the expansive vision of what a democratic movement might look like. So what I love about Ella Baker, she said things like, good leadership is to make people so strong, to help people get so strong. They don't need leaders, that kind of thing. They don't need charismatic leaders to tell them what to do. They think for themselves. And I think this approach to intersectionality, to social justice, and to hope, especially since she was focused on young people. Everybody wanted to just tell young people what to do. Sit down, be quiet. We want to tell you what to do. She wanted to empower them so they could do the analysis for their own lives. It was a very different vision. So my last bullet here is, I say, to broaden democratic participation or politics. Now, I'm putting up 4 categories of politics that I'll be working with in the second part of the talk. Because here, I want you to expand our vocabulary and how we imagine politics, and to imagine more as political than usually meets the eye. This slide is called Black Feminism and Political Action. And I have on this slide 4 bullet points, 4 aspects of politics that I would argue underlie Black feminism. This would be the framework that carries forward these ideas of social justice, these ideas of intersectionality, and these ideas of hope. And those 4 forms of politics are survival politics, cultural politics, protest politics, and formal politics. You still with me? I'm throwing a lot at you today. Are you all right with this? Is this a good university, or should I talk even slower? I know it's hot in here too. Everybody just go. It's okay to move and take a sip of water, as long as it's water, not anything cerveja, none of that. Vino, no. All right. But I've always thought more expansively about Black women's politics and political action than what I've taken in political science classes or what I've read. That doesn't mean that what occurs in political science is unimportant. It just means that it is not getting the whole story of what it means to be politically active if you're politically active as a Black woman in what you're confronting. So the 4 things that I have here, the survival politics, may be counterintuitive. It is political to survive in a society that is dedicated to your erasure, to your domination, that kills your children, that kills you. And when people kill you, doesn't care. To survive and to figure out how to survive with hope and social justice and with an analysis is a form of politics. How exactly does that happen? I'm just going to not talk about the next 2 that bullet. Cultural politics. A lot of people think cultural politics is just singing and dancing and just blowing off steam. Black women sing all the time, that's how we know they're happy. That was actually in my 6th grade textbook when I was in elementary school. It was the only thing in there about Black people, and it was about slavery. And there was a line that said, Black people sing all the slaves sang all the time, so they must have been happy. And I read this and I said, I was like 11 or 12, and I said, that just does not sound right to me. But I didn't have the language to talk about it then. But I knew lots of Black people who were singing and dancing for very different reasons, but I didn't know what they were. I knew it wasn't because they capitulated to slavery and therefore just said, I'm so happy, I'm a slave, hallelujah. That was not, translators, do your best back there, I know. I forgot about my translators, I'm sorry. I didn't know this was going to happen. Disculpe. All right, but I'm gonna do it anyhow, because I like you. But I argue that art, activism are deeply intertwined. And when you look at Black culture, you will find that ideas inform actions and actions inform ideas. This is that Foucauldian knowledge power intersection that is so god-awful dull when you read it, but really is a big idea the knowledge-power intersection. So the notion that art and ideas can empower people to action, to be motivated, to commit to things is very important. Many freedom movements have had music and dance and art and poetry at their center. So when I talk about cultural politics, I'm talking about a way of doing politics that is often not recognized as political at all, even though it may be profoundly political. And what I will put out there for you in a few minutes is that during times of tremendous pressure or oppression, some forms of politics become more important or pragmatic than others. But cultural politics and survival politics never go away. This third area of politics is what is normally recognized by the left as politics: protest. If you're not protesting, somehow you're not political. My students, Dr. Collins, I don't know if I'm political enough because am I black enough, Dr. Collins, because I'm not protesting all the time? Wait a minute. Where did you get the idea that pushing back all the time, a reaction to power, which is important, but that's the only way to push back against power, against racism, against sexism, against class exploitation, against all of those things? Protest is essential. Hear this, I'm saying that. Whether it's your own little individual protest, I don't know how many of you have had that individual protest. Some of you may be the passive-aggressive people. Do you know who you are? You don't say anything. You just say, I'm just not going to do that. Or I'll do it badly. Or I'll do it this way. Or some of you are into collective action, where there is a group that gets together and says, we share something, and we're going to protest. We're going to pressure. And when that group becomes large enough with enough individuals in it over time, that becomes a social movement. Now, what I argue when it comes to black feminism is you see protest politics from day one. It's not that slavery was so overwhelming that there was never protest, but it might have been very dangerous to protest. That example of Ida Wells Barnett, do you know what the citizens of Memphis said to her? That's where this occurred, Memphis, Tennessee. They said, Ida, if you ever come back to Memphis, we will lynch you. And they burned down the newspaper that published her work. So sometimes it's dangerous to engage in protest politics, giving the impression that one has no protest at all. Formal politics. What I mean by this is occupying positions of power and authority in government institutions, but also in social institutions. Now, very often in the US, when you see people who take positions of power and authority in an organization, they are accused of being sellouts, right? How do we know you haven't sold out now that you're working for the government, now that you're working for the corporation? How do we know this? I think some of the most effective political action has occurred by people who are insiders and they know how a system works and they use their positions toward a strategic end. And I would argue that many black women have been in that position when they have been able to capture those positions. This is not without risk. You are in Brazil. You understand what it means to occupy a formal political office and be so threatened and threatening to people because of your visibility and your power that you are killed. That is not a new story. That's an old story. but it is one that repeats itself. So formal politics, important to fight for that, keeping in mind that this isn't a friendly conversation. This is a struggle for empowerment. All right? Now I'm going to move on. I need to go faster. Oh, yeah, I need to pick up the pace. All right? Shall I pick up the pace for part 2 to give you time to comment? Some of you look like you're thinking. Pensamento, something like that. This is very good. And I'm surprised you're still awake based on how hot it is in here. So this is great, except for the little one. She can sleep. We have a sleeping child here. This is wonderful. Okay. I've put up the cover of the Portuguese translation of the book. And we're in part 2 now, Challenges and New Directions Toward a Politics of Empowerment. What will it take to move in that direction? So here's my question. What challenges, old and new, face black women now? This is always the question of looking at the here and now. What are the challenges that black women face that are old challenges, still struggling with them, and what are new challenges that come from today, that are facing us today? Questions that go along with that. How can black women learn from the past? Not to repeat the past, but what's there that's useful for us? This is why black women historians are very important for black women, because black feminist thought was denied a past for so long. There have been many, many people who engaged in survival politics, cultural politics, social movements, and formal politics, but whose names are not known and whose contributions are unacknowledged. So learning from the past and rewriting the past and rethinking the past is important. I am not a historian. I work from the work of the historians, which is why they are very important to now. It just occurred to me, this is the history building. Oh, this was in my talk. I was not actually planning on giving the historians a shout out like this, all right? But it is true. Well, at least the ones that I'm thinking about. There are a few folk who, you know, their stuff is a little slow, shall we say, all right? How do particular social contexts shape these challenges? How does being in Brazil shape the challenges that face black women? How does being in the US shape the challenges? How does being in continental Africa or the UK shape those challenges? And by the way, I guess I should say something about the obvious challenges. You know what they are. Violence against black women, healthcare, education, reproductive rights, poverty, housing, children, family, loved ones, the richness and the texture of all the areas in black women's lives where they are denied full humanity. Those are the challenges. The challenge of being denied full humanity. Now, the social issues that I've listed, there's improvement, and then there's going backwards, and then there's improvement, and there's going backwards. But those challenges are still there. That big challenge is there. Full humanity is when empowerment is fully reached. When I say social context, I mentioned national contexts, but I could also talk about family as a social context, community as part of a social context, neighborhood as a social context, other forms of local, regional, national, global. Place matters. It's not enough for me to write a book about African American women and assume that the ideas travel everywhere. Instead, we have to look at challenges in each place. And the question here, what possibilities exist for political action? Now, I'm going to argue that when you have changes like those that we are looking at now, it's no surprise to anyone that there is a political backlash right now, described as right-wing populism and the election to national office by people who are very, very uninterested in black feminism, and in fact are antithetical to many of the ideas that I've put up here. Now, some might consider that to be so depressing, which it is. I'm not lying. But this is the moment that we inhabit. And we inhabit this moment from particular places. So this is the time to take a step back and ask, what possibilities exist for political action now? Thinking more broadly about political action. So for me, it's looking at those categories, strategic possibilities for a politics of empowerment. What are the strategic possibilities for a politics of empowerment if we think holistically about now and ask ourselves, where can the work occur? Where can black feminism occur? Where is it occurring? How do we map it using these kinds of ideas? So what I look at with this particular graphic is how cultural politics, survival politics, formal politics, and protest politics inform one another. Not that they all have to be equally visible. It might be that during a period of persecution, one has to drop back to more less visible forms of politics, survival, cultural, or it may be during a time of victory and being emboldened, protest politics really work, and formal politics also are more viable. My point is, it's the constellation of these strategies. They're always all there. And to pick one and assume that's the one that's going to work, and if you can't do that, you might as well give up, is a problem. So I'd like to talk about each one of these very briefly in terms of black women, and then here and the now and the challenges, and then wrap it up and open it up. First, the advantage of formal politics, insider advocacy. I have mentioned capturing positions of power and authority, electoral politics, if I looked at the government, for example. Unbeknownst to many, many people, black women have been trying to participate in government for a long time. On the far right, you see a picture of Shirley Chisholm. Anybody know Shirley Chisholm? Ran for president decades ago. She's from New York. She said, I can be president, thereby even trying the impossible was a statement to say, this might be possible someday. Hasn't happened yet. But on the left, I put up the Congresswoman Barbara Jordan from Texas. This is a state today that has tremendous issues with its black and Latino citizens. This is Barbara Jordan as part of the impeachment hearings, okay, of Richard Nixon. Now, there are some impeachment hearings going on now that you might have heard a little something about. But if you look up Barbara Jordan, she was an amazing congressperson. And she was one of one or two, but there she was. That insider knowledge positioned her very interestingly. In the middle, you have Maxine Waters, who's in Congress, and she's from California. She is not and she's still in Congress. And she's still feisty. And she's been there a long time. And you might want to imagine who would absolutely hate her and what she represents. All right? But there she is. So the notion of trying to capture positions, and when the time is right, using insider positions appropriately. Speaks to wanting to be a college president, wanting to be a professor, wanting to be a provost, wanting to be a dean, wanting to be a department chair, wanting to be a physician, wanting to run the hospital. All of those insider positions position people to deliver things to people who need them. And that is something that black women quietly have been going about doing for quite some time. I think this is profoundly political without being recognized as such, unless it's formal government. So I put this whole notion of insider advocacy there to say, people who are often the most effective politically do not announce themselves. They're not wearing a t-shirt that says, I'm trying to change this university, and I'm gonna fire you the minute I have enough power to do it because you're racist and sexist. That is not what they do. They look to what makes the institution more fair, more democratic, more just, and they go to the work of making that happen. And those people are often unrecognized and unnamed. And they often have positions that are not big, fancy positions. They may be secretaries, they may be administrative, they may be custodial staff. Can I tell you one small example? Give me license to tell you a story. Tell me you can handle it. You can do this, right? You can listen to a long lecture. You've been to college. This is what we teach you to do. We teach you to sit there and look interested when you're not. It prepares you for academic conferences. You know this, right? When I was in high school, I went to a high school program where I had not realized that I was going to be one of the only black students in that program. It was for teachers, future teachers of America. And I was one of, I think I might have been the only black girl in that program. There might have been another one. Out of 100 students. This was at Northwestern University. And I didn't even know what to do. I was so out of my element. There were no black people anywhere, except the people who were working in the cafeteria and the support staff. So what they would do, one day one man came by and he put this little item, he gave me a tiny little present. And I looked at it and I said, what is this? He gave me a little present. Someone else gave me a little present. They were watching out for me because they knew I was 16 years old. And I was out there trying to do something that hadn't been done before. One woman leaned over, she said to me, do you know where you can go and get your hair done? I had no idea. She said, if you just go over there, you can get your... They were telling me all these things that I needed to be successful in this particular institution that no workshop was ever going to do for me. And by the time I left that program, I felt so supported by them, even though they remained nameless, anonymous, and to the people they were serving, just a pair of hands, because that's what service is. Good service is to erase your humanity and put yourself fully at the service of those who are more powerful than you. So, capturing positions of power and authority, they exercised power and authority in the positions where they were. Protest politics. Here's the next sign. The Black Lives Matter movement, I think, has led to a revitalization of protest politics, both in the US and globally. Interestingly, black women have been central to Black Lives Matter. Black gay, lesbian, transgendered folk have been central to this movement. It's been a movement that picks up on Ella Baker's ideas about the freedom movement and democratic participation. And you see the graphic that I have. These are just, all you have to do is just Google Black Lives Matter and look at all the images. There's so much to see there. I just picked one or two. But what I like about these images are the young people who are participating in Black Lives Matter. This is a young movement. This is a movement that has inspired people at a point in their lives. Well, they will carry this analysis forward, hopefully, and let's see what they do with it. It came at a time when they needed it. The sign on the top says, "We will not forget." And that's talking about the killings of young black men. This is a girl, young black woman, holding that sign up. The sign in the middle says, "Why don't you care?" The whole notion of why are we the only ones who should care? Why don't you care that someone is killing children? And the third one says, "We are all one bullet away from becoming a hashtag." Now that's really powerful stuff, to think about your social media presence as a hashtag, one bullet away, right? That's a statement about solidarity. Down on the bottom, there's a sign that says, "There comes a time when silence is betrayal." All the times people remain silent for whatever reasons, and that can be a form of betrayal. When is the time right to speak up? Protest politics are all about speaking up at the right time and speaking out at the right time. And this has been a part of Black feminism. Protest politics. I put up here the picture of Charlene Carruthers, who is one of many young black women who is taking all of this forward as a thinker and as an activist. And unlike people who are activists, who often don't have time to write their own books, she did. And her book is titled Unapologetic. Interesting term. No more apologies. Unapologetic. A black, queer, and feminist mandate for radical movements. I just love this title. I find Charlene, I've heard her speak. I don't know her personally. I've heard her speak, and she was pretty fiery and fierce, okay? So, protest politics of a rising generation. We don't know what's going to happen there with protest politics, but you can't convince me that just because the media is not covering Black Lives Matter, that it has gone away. The catalyst that starts something will continue until the social problem is solved. Now, I talked about the two on the bottom. I just talked about formal politics and protest politics. And I would argue this period of time that the US is coming out of is very much a period of time where you could see formal politics successes and protest politics. But what happens if protest isn't as visible or viable, or it's more dangerous? What happens if formal politics begins to be shut down? I don't know if you're aware of voter suppression efforts in the United States. That means everything possible to keep people from being eligible to vote and to actually vote. So that an election where you have effectively disenfranchised part of the population may appear to be a bona fide election, but it might actually be a fraud. African Americans have had decades of being disenfranchised, and black women especially so. So efforts to take away the vote without it looking like it's a campaign mean that formal politics may change unless there are people keeping an eye on that. But I just want to close by talking about the two areas that are less often seen as political. They would be cultural politics of art and activism and survival politics of love, family, and community. And you should say, love? What's political about love? Ooh, she's going to get mushy and stuff on us. That's not the argument I'm going to make, all right? Although, if you want to get mushy, you can, all right? But I think cultural politics, and here I've got cultural politics and hope. I have a bullet that says a bit more about what I mean. Music, theater, fiction, dance, drama, photography, film, and similar spaces of creativity are actually spaces that are flourishing now among black women. Very big. Black women filmmakers, black women in the theater, musicians. We've had fiction for a while. The poetry is poetry not up there? Why is poetry not there? Poetry should be there. Last weekend, I think it was at the Rio, well, what was this? The Slam Poetry Finals. Do you know about this? Were you there? No, you weren't there. I mean, these women were just, poetry was power. Their poetry was powerful. So I'm thinking of things like that. I'm not thinking of the opera necessarily or ballet. I'm thinking of black culture as a source of ideas, criticism, critique, creativity. And when you face a moment like now, this would be the time where artists help us think through the times that we are in. That's one aspect. But a second aspect is cultural politics help us create meaning in everyday life, right? Create meaning in our everyday lives. For example, do any of you have a favorite song? It's, the one that you're listening to. It gives you inspiration, or it gives you hope or happiness, or you're in a different space when you're listening to it. And it's helping your life have meaning still, or pointing you in a different way than if you had not heard that song. I'm not talking about the booty party songs, people. That's not, I'm not talking, that's, We've seen the pole dance. That's really not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about art that has the potential to move and to get you to think. Visual art. Those are the artists. And pop culture wants to steal that art and make money on it. So it's hard for us to see the difference. But when you're looking at black culture and you're looking at something like fashion, that can be a site of creativity and cultural politics. In a world that says black women are ugly, when you have black women that say, not only am I not ugly, I have a different aesthetic about what beauty is. And you want me to do this with my hair, and I'm going to do this with my hair, and it's beautiful. That's saying something. Now, that's political in small moments and in big moments, but we may not recognize it as such. Loving black people is a form of resistance. Let me move on to survival. Survival politics. And I probably should have on the top of your survival politics. Now, this one is going to get philosophically complicated, but it's pretty obvious. All right, I'm going to try and make this really obvious. If you are designated the unlovable person in your culture, why would anybody want to love a black woman? To love a black woman is a form of resistance. Now, I open this with loving black people as a form of resistance, using the book, Toni Morrison, who has just passed on, her book, Beloved, who, in this book, it's a book about love, domination, and resistance through love. It's a terrible story. A woman who kills her child so that she will not live under slavery. She refuses to have her child live that way. And this, to me, is very much pointing to something that I've been talking about for quite some time as mother work. Black women's work in thinking about the next generation and their children and the survival of their children as a very important site of politics. This particular book is the tragic outcome when you cannot protect your children, or to protect them, you let them go. But the question that comes for me from this particular work and from art and politics is, wait a minute, what is this slide doing up here? Excuse me. I may have to chat with myself about this slide, all right? Okay, I've chatted with myself. I've moved on, all right? Because there's a bullet there I didn't want on that slide. I wanted it on a different slide. Audre Lorde, major figure in U.S. black feminism, who argues that loving black women is a radical act. And she doesn't just mean loving black women because they're wonderful. She means sexually loving one another is fine, whatever form that love takes. Loving ourselves, loving one another, others love us. They cannot love us and we don't love ourselves. So this notion of a radical, revolutionary love, emotions as a site of politics, not just the mind, not just the body, but what's at the core of who we are, how we feel, is a part of politics. On the left, you see her book, Sister Outsider. On the right, there is a quote from Audre Lorde that very much speaks to this survival politics of raising people differently, raising yourself differently, if you can figure out how to do it. She says, the true focus of revolutionary change is never merely the oppressive situations that we seek to escape, but that piece of the oppressor which is planted deep within each of us. What she is saying is that intersectional analysis of racism or sexism or class or sexuality, those systems aren't just out there. They're in here. And that disrupting those systems, if you can do that by how you treat other people, and especially by how you raise other people, is a form of political action. Are you still with me on this? Yeah, this is sort of like, if you talk to black people and say, my mama was central in my life, my mother was crucial, and they talk about things their mothers were able to do and were not able to do. And I'm always hearing them talking about a politics there, a survival politics. Loving yourself is a radical act. Do you know who Lizzo is? Lizzo made it to Brazil. I've been hanging around the wrong people because I've been asking for 2 weeks, have you ever heard of Lizzo? And there's this blank look on their face. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I hadn't heard of Lizzo until lately, all right? I'm late to Lizzo's party. But, and I've chosen very strategically the graphic that I'm showing you, because this is a person who's using popular culture and the arts to say, I love myself. I totally love myself. You may think that I'm fat, and I may be. I am maybe. I sure am. But I love it, because here's what I'm going to do with it. And if I don't love myself, how could other people love me? So what you see in this kind of discourse of loving yourself as a radical act is something that doesn't just happen accidentally. It's part of a political struggle, and it's foundational to politics. So if all you do is raise your child so that she doesn't grow up to feel ugly, devalued, all of that, that's a political act in a culture that is designed to eliminate her. So, I'm going to skip that because you look tired. Okay, fine. If you're going to be like that. They started whining up here in the front. My goodness, I only have 2 more slides. This is one of them. All right? Just trying to, be kind to you. All righty, fine. Sorry. All righty. So, I guess summing up here, to me, survival politics are all about care and hope. This is the site where care occurs, where people care for each other, and where you care for yourself. And because of that care, there is the possibility of hope. Our big theories don't necessarily give people care or hope. If you want to know why people go to religion and aren't just sitting in the classroom saying, explain oppression to me, because explaining oppression does not talk about care, hope, and survival. So this whole notion of survival politics is being crucial, especially during difficult times, and finding ways to validate black women who do it is fundamental for me. Black feminism is fundamentally defensive, protecting self and others, and generative, generating something, creating something, whatever that something may be. I describe this as protecting spirit, mind, and body. Not just mind, not just spirit, but body as well. Using body, mind, spirit for creative, holistic resistance. If you know who you are and you know what the risks are, you're equipped to take on social injustice and hope and analyze things and be politically active. Mother work as a site of generative and a resistant black feminism. This is survival politics. All right, now I'm going to sum up for real. Can we sum up for real? Okay, fine. We're going to do that. Notice this graphic. These are women who probably were just taking care of their kids. And they're thinking, when Freddie Gray was killed, I think this is from that one. You know, this is like a common thing. Is my son next? Hashtag Black Lives Matter. After you have spent so many years raising a child, keeping that child safe, sending that child to school, ensuring that child's survival, and somebody kills your child. This is just an extension of the work they've already been doing. To actually go out and hold up a sign and say, look, I'm still protecting my child. He or she may be with me at this particular protest. Oh, and often they are. If you start looking, there they are. Here's a little boy. Racism isn't born, it's taught. Well, that's one of his first words that he's writing. He looks pretty little. Black Lives Matter. This little one down here is so serious, such a special little picture. It's about her future. All right, and there she is with her tiny little self holding up a Black Lives Matter sign. Now, she's at a protest, but what about the children who are at home, whose mothers are, and fathers often, but mothers, are whispering things in their ears about you can be anything you want, baby, but it's going to be a hard fight for you. You need to know that. Or this little one on the side, I matter. I matter. That's a powerful message for a small black child, and especially for a black female child. So this, to me, is all part of another kind of analysis we need of politics that looks at survival politics in relation to these other expressions of politics. And this is what you will hear least about as political, because it's often identified as being natural and just what black women do kind of thing. But I don't look at it that way at all. So I want to get out ahead of that now. So now, this is my sum up slide. This is what we've been through. What is possible in the here and now? This is the problem solving. Survival politics, cultural, protest, formal. What constellation of those? And how might the core ideas of black feminism persist and change in this particular moment? These are the tools for thinking about the here and now, for crafting the responses, and for imagining that future where we all hope we can go. Thank you. Obrigada. You all were amazingly patient Oh, I had no idea I was going to turn into a preacher today. So we'll let people leave who need to.
Olá. Nós temos tempo para algumas questões. Vocês têm que falar no microfone para que a tradução possa... Para que ela possa entender, tem que falar no microfone. Está aqui com a professora Nadya. Alguém gostaria de fazer alguma pergunta?
Hello.
Where are you? There you are. Okay.
Here.
Pode falar
First in English.
Pode falar
Oh.
em português, se você quiser, que traduz.
Tá. Meu nome é Marcos. Eu tenho 26 anos. E eu sou produtor audiovisual. E ator também. Eu recentemente verifiquei alguns números pertinente a como os afro-americanos votaram em 2016, nas eleições presidenciais. E eu acabei vendo que 90%, praticamente 90% dos afro-americanos votaram na Hillary Clinton. Essa porcentagem ela é maior do que comparada aos hispânicos nos Estados Unidos. O que você acha que influencia os negros do seu país, mesmo os conservadores e religiosos, a criarem essa unidade e acabarem votando nos democratas? E uma outra pergunta: o que você acha do Partido Democrata?
Our two-party system is such that you get to choose A or B. It's that simple. And if A is saying, we hate black people, we hate gays, we're trying to take away your money, we're going to take your houses away. This was the 2008 financial crisis that was basically theft of property of black people, all those loans that were on houses. People lost their homes, all right? If you have a party that says, we've been plotting to do this for 30, 40 years, we started in the 80s with Ronald Reagan, and we've continued on ever since. And, you know, if you have a party that is saying all of that, and the candidate that they are running is a gentleman who is not a gentleman, but a person who is clearly upholding those ideas, you vote for the other person. All right? It's as simple as that. So in a lot of ways, I think it's not that the Democratic Party is perfection. It is not. But I am telling you, if the choice is A or B, and choosing C, and showing your dissent by not voting at all, and thinking someone will come to your house and talk to you about why you didn't vote, is simply naive and misrecognizes the nature of the struggle for voting rights in the United States on the part of African Americans. That's the reality of the situation. Many of the other groups are not aware of that. New immigrant groups come to the U.S. Hoping, believing in the dream, which is a wonderful dream, but it is a dream. The notion of conservative black people, that's an interesting way to go. Those are individual conservative black people. If you look at the masses of black people, bigger question is not whether they're going to go to the Republican Party or not, but it's how to get them to vote in the first place, how to make sure that their vote is protected, how to get them to the polls, and to make sure that they understand the nature of the choice that they are making when they vote. It is their right to vote any way they want. It's a secret ballot. But I don't know. I don't see these elections ideologically. I don't necessarily think the Democrats are going to come up with the perfect candidate. And if it's not the perfect candidate, to me, it's not a choice. I don't even care which of those Democrats is running. I'm going to vote for the Democrat. So maybe, because I know what the alternative is. And I think that a lot of black people actually do feel that way, because we see the reality of the choice, not the rhetoric around democracy and what it should mean. We're voting the pragmatics of the choice, right? So that's one thing. Now, Brazil's a totally different situation.
Questões?
Eu sou Ana Flávia, faço Geografia aqui. E um dos meus principais problemas na questão do feminismo, e, enfim, é quando a gente vai falar de mulheres, de homens negros e mulheres brancas. Você falou um pouquinho disso, e eu acho muito difícil, desculpa, estou tremendo aqui, mas eu acho muito difícil porque a gente tem dados, por exemplo, aqui no Brasil, de homens pretos que ganham menos que mulheres brancas. E isso contradiz muito com um discurso que é dito de mulheres sempre ganham menos. E aí eu queria te perguntar, assim, tentar entender um pouco de como abordar isso com o feminismo branco. Porque a gente está falando de coisas, principalmente o feminismo negro, a gente está para além de mulheres, a gente está pautando homens também. E como levar isso, como mostrar isso, como tirar um pouco desses, não mitos, mas essas verdades que são colocadas como absolutas e que você pega situações que isso não se mostra como real, assim. Como conversar, como deixar mais didático, enfim.
Okay. Let me just think about some ways of cutting into that. First of all, what you're putting forth is the beginning of an intersectional argument. When you say it's going beyond gender, that's the starting point of an intersectional argument. So for black women to realize that black women will not progress without an intersectional argument. Being paid less is one part, but being relegated to black women's jobs is a very important part. The fact that so many black women work in domestic work is important in terms of the labor market, women's jobs and men's jobs, and black jobs and white jobs, to begin to look at the structures that position black women and black men. Black men, you just have to understand that black men have to really develop a feminism. They have to develop a feminist analysis of racism and gender, and to see gender as something that shapes their lives. The ways in which the ideas about black masculinity put them in little boxes that are different and just as small as the boxes that black women are in. The way I approach it is usually through something that people care about but experience differently. It is no secret that black communities experience violence. Women experience violence, domestic violence, sexual violence, often at the hands of black men. Black men experience very much state-sanctioned violence, but they also experience violence at the hands of black men. So the whole notion of fighting one another, drug war for turf, is actually very often a statement about markets, but it's also about masculinity and respect. A lot of violence is done to defend certain ideas about masculinity. And black men to be able to see that they are affected by a race and gender and a class analysis through the violence that they encounter, hopefully would position them to see how black women are in a similar situation, experienced differently. And that's the nature of the conversation that needs to happen around issues of black masculinity, black femininity, so we're not always ranking who has it worse. The numbers are helpful in giving us a sense of society, but they aren't necessarily helpful as a starting point for how we should deal with one another, you see. So I use the example of violence, which is different than talking about money or jobs or schooling or those kinds of things where there are similar contentious issues. So I'm giving you maybe a way to start thinking about what the possibilities of an intersectional analysis that allow black women to both understand the situation that black men are in and also challenge their behavior. And black men can understand the situation that black women are in and challenge behavior on the part of black women that is very often coming from a place of hurt and pain and suffering. So that recognition of each other's social location, not just, somebody can be, they're just not ready. Sometimes they're just not ready. There are women who aren't ready for black feminism. They're afraid. It's like for white women. It's this, it's that, where I started my talk, all right? But black men are also afraid to consider other ways of being because we don't show them enough ways for other ways of being. And this is why when I talk about survival politics and care and love, that can become a very important site of black feminist politics. I think it always has been. But it's not the site that gets recognized. I'm not saying it should be the only site. No way am I saying that. But the tools that I'm giving to you or trying to share to see what you think about them should be helpful to you in thinking about these everyday situations that you encounter. All right, the black man who's disrespectful to you on the bus, that kind of thing, while you're waiting for a bus. Or, it's just all that kind of daily disrespect, if in fact that's how you're living your life. If you're in public space, I'm assuming you are, all right, that you just have to deal with it. So there's just another way to be that's not this, all right? And this is the hope that we're going to figure out how to get a little closer. We may not arrive, but we can certainly do better than how we're doing now.
Série Santos, eu sou jornalista e doutoranda aqui na ECA. E não sou de São Paulo. Na apresentação que a professora Nadya fez da sua produção, ela deixou bem claro o tempo entre o lançamento do feminismo, o pensamento negro nos Estados Unidos e aqui no Brasil. O que, para mim, é um sinal do quanto o Brasil se mantém numa postura racista e que tentou não nos permitir conhecê-la. Mas, apesar disso, eu faço parte de uma geração de mulheres negras que, quando acessavam algum livro, traduziam e seus textos circulavam entre nós. Então, nós aqui no Brasil, nós temos uma identidade muito grande com o teu pensamento. Eu gostaria de saber o que você pensa, o que você está achando desse momento que nós, mulheres negras, estamos vivendo no Brasil. E a outra questão é que, apesar dessa defasagem de tempo, você continua fiel à ideia de intersecção. Eu também. Mas é uma proposta que tem recebido muitas críticas, inclusive por segmentos que não contemplam a população negra. Então, eu queria ouvir alguma coisa tua a esse respeito. Obrigada.
First, the political moment. I think the political moment saddens me because I think Brazil was making so much progress, and still may, but now has to think about progress in education and healthcare differently because of the changing political climate in which people work and live. That saddens me. However, what excites me is a generation of young black women who are unapologetically black, like Charlene Carruthers, in ways that are really, really just give me so much hope. I tell people that my first trip to Brazil was 2003, when things were just taking off. It was really a place where you could see the change. But I never got back until 2014. And during that period of time in the US, I became very discouraged and disenchanted because I could not see where my work was going. Now, you've heard that I continue to write regardless. That doesn't slow me down. But it does mean I have to think about what I'm writing and to whom I'm writing. It was shocking to me when I came here in 2014, and all these people, first of all, there were all these black women who were just amazing. And they said, "Oh, but we know your work." I was shocked. How do you know my work? This is when people started telling me about what I would call the underground translation industry you have here. Which one person said to me, "Oh, we have a group, so-and-so's in the UK, and she translates over internet and over this." And it was amazing to me how when people want ideas, it's a statement about the importance of doing intellectual work that speaks to both power, but to people. My book on intellectual activism, I write about that. You know, translating ideas in both directions, to power and to people. So I just think that this is, in many ways, exciting, but also, sadly, more of the same. I really wish that we didn't have to go through continuing to fight these same fights. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to exhale and just sort of sit there and just say, ah. But that does happen in smaller moments. Now, the second question was about intersectionality. When something begins to be effective, I take the fact that we're now getting criticism as a good thing, not as a bad thing, because it says certain people are threatened by intersectionality. What exactly in there is threatening them? Because for quite some time, no one cared. As long it was just some black women over there saying this, or some Latinos, or some people who really didn't count, all right, and they weren't necessarily affecting people, they can have their intersectionality, or whatever it's called. But now that it has taken off in some interesting ways, it faces the challenge of defining itself on its own terms, defending itself, and taking itself forward, or other people will define this for us, and they will take it forward, or more likely, they will kill it. This is the death knell. When you get too popular in the academy, you're chic, you're in, and then next year you're out. You're like fashion. Particularly for people who don't have their own original ideas. They come after yours, all right? Oh, I hate to be so candid, but this is the phase of life I'm in. All right, it's just the way it is. I'm sorry if you're that person and you're ill, then maybe you should hear this, all right? So the book that I just finished, Intersectionality as Critical Social Theory, really provides a set of conceptual tools for thinking about these issues without being organized around, oh my gosh, they're coming for intersectionality, the evil people. It's really a serious analysis of the kinds of things we need to think about if this discourse is going to do the kinds of things that it wants to do. Now, I argue that intersectionality, one version comes from black feminism, because there was a need to develop these ideas for black women to move toward freedom. But I'm not arguing that it's the property of black feminism or that there aren't other sites where intersectional analyses have also occurred. This is a very democratic, global set of ideas. It has the potential to be that much more than it already is. So that what can happen are people who are Romani women who don't even know any black women, Romani women in Eastern Europe, the so-called gypsies, who've been maligned for a long time, can recognize in intersectionality a language to have a discussion with black women that does not have to go through a white male center. That is very, very threatening to power. But the book is out, it's done, it's written, because it took me 30 years to get this one translated, but I don't think it's going to take 30 years to get that one translated. Because it's already in Brazil. In fact, I'm shocked. I got my own copy 2 months ago. And I go, hello, we've been reading your book. And I'm thinking, how is this possible? Because new technologies make things possible now that were not possible when this first was published. The gatekeeping was tremendous. Whereas now, the gatekeeping is not as strong. And also, Brazil seems to find ways to say phooey with gatekeeping. If we really want this, we're going to figure out how to get this, because we can make a way out of no way. You see? So that's what I would say about that.
Thank you.
Olá, meu nome é Arthur, eu tenho 23 anos, eu sou estudante aqui de Ciências Sociais, sou estudante da Márcia Lima. E eu tenho uma pergunta sobre a questão de política formal, que você falou sobre a questão do meio de estratégia de luta da política formal. Uma coisa que me preocupa muito é que, como você sabe, a gente teve aqui no Brasil o caso da Marielle, que a partir do momento que a gente teve toda uma força para colocar uma pessoa que representava muitas pessoas, muitas mulheres negras, muitas pessoas vindas da favela do Rio de Janeiro, quando a gente teve uma representante, o mesmo Estado que talvez devesse protegê-la, foi o mesmo Estado que a manda matá-la e executá-la. E, por exemplo, toda vez que eu vejo uma pessoa negra, uma mulher negra, um homem negro sendo eleito, ao mesmo tempo que eu fico muito feliz, ainda eu fico muito preocupado e muito angustiado, porque eu entendo que aquela pessoa virou um alvo a partir do momento que ela foi eleita. E eu fico muito me perguntando como nós que somos pessoas fora da política, né, que não estamos inseridos nessa política formal, como a gente consegue, talvez, criar uma rede de proteção ou criar alguma coisa que possa colaborar dentro dessa luta formal. Eu fico muito angustiado com isso.
Yeah. I don't want you anguished, but I think it's a really important question. The tragedy of Marielle is that someone who was so representative of so many was killed because she was powerful. That was the issue. The visibility made her extremely powerful. I think the issue in moving forward is always making sure that there are many people who can replace her, so that we know there's not just one who's so special, but we know in talking with younger people that there are many ways that you can make your political contribution, and there are risks involved with each of them. In many ways, going into formal institutions is like going into the military. That's how it feels. You know, you're taking on duties and responsibilities that are contradictory, particularly if it's a public position. A lot of institutional positions are not public. So that's really good. But when you take on it's more safe, not good, but it's safer. But if you take on a public position, you are the face of something, that is a risk. And I think many people are aware of that risk. This was the concern when Barack Obama was elected president. There were many older black people who were extremely concerned that he was going to be assassinated. Now, he wasn't. Don't know how, why, what happened there, but he easily could have been. All right? So I think this is an old story because the intention is to scare you into not trying that anymore. It's the fear that's the issue that shuts down the movement. But not everybody can do that, nor should everybody do that. The reason I present a more expansive understanding of political action is I don't want people pointing fingers at each other, saying one kind of political action is better than another. I think we need to specialize in certain things and work together across those specializations. One thing I didn't say in my talk is some of the more effective people are insiders who work with outsiders. People inside institutions who work with leaders who are in social movements or grassroots organizations. And that's not something that even has to be public. That's just something you do, you see. So there's a lot of space there for political maneuverability if there's a clear shared goal, which is why I start with social justice. There's got to be something like that. It may not be social justice. That term may be stolen and we have to use something else. But the notion that it can be better than it is really important for young people to believe, despite the fact of seeing the cost that some people pay. Many of these young black men in the U.S. and black women who have been targets of police violence are dead. A lot of people die, right? And that's something that I think we need to talk about bigger than just the individual person. We really have to say, this is a society, maybe Brazil perhaps, and I think it is, but certainly the U.S., that has been comfortable from day one with killing black people and killing black people's children. And that's wrong. That's fundamentally wrong. All right? This little boy, I matter. Okay. So the question of how you go on after something like that, healing from wounds where you lose people and you don't, the term anguished, is the time for healing is really important, taking the time. But the people who are perpetually forever changed so that they are so afraid they can't even move forward, there are other things they can do and that people can do for them. Some of that poetry that I've been talking about, that spoken word poetry, is exactly the place where people take this anguish. You just hear it, all right? So it's a healing space for them, but it's also a political space. So I just think having if your expectations are things will be fixed tomorrow, you misread this entire thing. This is a lifetime commitment.
São 7h05 e nós estamos trabalhando com a possibilidade de 1 hora para que a professora Patricia Hill Collins possa dar autógrafos para os que queiram com respeito ao livro. Então, haviam 4 pessoas que queriam ainda fazer perguntas. Depois, se você não se importar, coleto as 4 perguntas juntas.
Oh, the questions.
Ok?
And then we'll wrap up.
E você as responde de uma só vez. Tá bom? Você é uma, tem uma segunda, uma terceira e uma
Seria bom que as pessoas
quarta.
que fossem perguntar ficassem aqui na frente, para mais rápido.
Eu ia sugerir uma rodada de perguntas, mas a gente não tem tempo, porque tinha muita gente lá atrás. Patrícia, eu conheci você no ano passado, no coquetel na PUC, com a Tula Pires, e eu queria agradecer muito esse momento. Eu estava numa profunda depressão por ser muito próxima da Marielle. E eu estava fazendo 2 mestrados.
That's exactly it.
Eu acho que uma mulher negra fazer 2 mestrados é um grande reflexo de que a gente ainda tem que se esforçar o dobro para conseguir alcançar o mesmo lugar. E naquela época eu não tinha forças de seguir. E aí eu lembro que você, como todo mundo viu aqui, uma característica muito especial sua é o humor. E você me falou isso. Usa o humor como arma. Usa o afeto como arma, como estratégia para passar esse momento tão difícil no Rio de Janeiro, que era o ano passado, e a gente está no ano muito pior agora. E Débora Peterson Small também fala a mesma coisa. Usa o humor como estratégia para sobreviver a esses momentos antidemocráticos, porque eu não sei se aqui no Brasil tivemos uma democracia de fato para as pessoas negras, indígenas e outros grupos em vulnerabilidade. Então, agradeço muito por isso. Se eu puder autografar meu livro, vou super agradecer. E teve uma outra questão que você falou, que você também tocou nisso hoje, a potência das mulheres negras jovens aqui no Brasil. E eu acredito que você tem se esforçado para ter essas trocas na América Latina, sobretudo. E aí você disse, me interessa muito investir nessas mulheres, em programas de bolsas. Eu queria saber se a proposta está de pé, que a gente está super precisando aqui no Brasil. Obrigada.
Bom, a pergunta ia mais ou menos na mesma direção, né? Antes de mais nada, eu queria agradecer muito a sua presença aqui. A gente está numa universidade que foi, ou é uma das últimas, a inserir, né, as cotas raciais como ingresso para o ensino superior. Então, a sua presença aqui é muito importante nesse sentido. E todo mundo que pega o microfone fica emocionado. Eu queria dizer que eu fiquei emocionada ao longo da sua fala. Eu sou professora na Universidade Federal de São Paulo. No meu campus, eu sou uma das 2 únicas professoras negras, e a gente sabe o que isso significa no cotidiano, né, no nosso cotidiano acadêmico, o que isso significa. Eu queria agradecer também a sua presença, agradecer a Boitempo por ter publicado o seu livro, porque, por meio da publicação do seu livro, a gente tem visto também uma renovação, uma retomada de importantes intelectuais brasileiras, como a Lélia Gonzalez, Beatriz Nascimento e tantas outras que, inclusive, podem estar aqui presentes, né? E aí, um outro aspecto da sua fala, que eu acho que é fundamental, é porque ela abre a possibilidade de esperança, né? E essa esperança, nesse momento, para a gente tem sido muito importante. A gente tem aqui um lema que acho que começou com a morte da Marielle, depois, quando a gente foi para as ruas gritar ele não, que é ninguém solta a mão de ninguém, né? E um outro aspecto importante também da sua fala, e que tem a ver com esse ninguém solta a mão de ninguém, é a possibilidade da gente estabelecer uma rede muito maior, não apenas de solidariedade, né, não apenas de publicação de intelectuais negras, mas de vislumbrar uma sociedade que possa ser efetivamente outra. É isso. Obrigada.
Boa noite, professora, tudo bem? Na fala da senhora, a senhora pontuou muito a esperança como uma das bases do pensamento feminista negro, né? Também outras intelectuais, como a Audre Lorde, falam também da importância da raiva como uma ferramenta, um instrumento potente de luta. E eu gostaria de saber também, pensando nesse contexto que a gente está vivendo no Brasil, se, na sua opinião, é possível conciliar a raiva com a esperança. Se uma pode alimentar a potência da outra, e se sim, como que a gente faz isso? Obrigada.
Olá. Ao longo da sua fala, acho que algo que apareceu foi essa necessidade também do contingente branco dentro das nossas lutas. E aí eu queria que a senhora comentasse mais um pouco como lidar com essa necessidade e, ao mesmo tempo, essa problemática que é precisar do contingente branco para essas lutas, que agregam raça, gênero, sexualidade, etc. E de modo que seja efetivo e não coisas como que a senhora trouxe um pouco, que é essa pregação já sobre a opressão que a gente conhece diariamente, ou acabar gerando essa disputa de poder em locais que deveriam ser de atuação e contato dessas pessoas negras. Então, se há diferenças nesses locais e nessas atuações políticas e como a senhora entende isso?
Okay. Let me just pull from those four.
Just one
What? You should.
Oi, Patrícia, eu vou tentar, vou ser breve. Eu escrevi a minha pergunta em inglês para tentar facilitar a comunicação. I watched your speech last week in Amped, in Rio de Janeiro, when you said that the intersectionality approach needs to face the challenge to go beyond the politics of identity,
Yes.
based on subjectivity, and reach the field of social structure and social justice.
Okay.
I've been studying how this concept, social justice, and the way it is taught by Iris Young and Nancy Fraser, how this concept of social justice may provide a useful framework to analyze the implications of neoliberal policies in education. I would like to hear from you, what do you think of these two theories? First, the 5 Faces of Oppression by Iris Young, which is marginalization, exploitation, powerlessness, cultural imperialism, violence, and second, Nancy Fraser's focus on highlighting the 2 dimensions of social justice, recognition and redistribution. Do you think that by providing a social justice framework concerned with social structures, they can also contribute to address the challenge faced by the intersectionality approach? These 2 frameworks.
All right, I'm going to answer this one really quickly, because I think that you put your finger on the work that needs to be done, and you seem to be doing that work. Starting with those particular people, talking about Iris Young's framework of oppression. She really had a very different understanding of social justice than if you look at just the literature on social justice, which is huge. Right? I mean, it's in the criminal justice system, distributive justice, reparative justice and reparations. All of that is a whole other aspect of social justice, the legal system and how it considers these kinds of things. So I would really encourage you to look beyond. This is a wonderful starting place, but to also look beyond those 2 people and to take on this question of social justice, because it seems like what you're also adding in is how that works with neoliberalism, right? Which is important. It's almost like you're writing a book. Is this a dissertation? Okay, all right. Let me come back then. I'm just going to finish up here. But this, to me, is an extended conversation, and it's something that, in this setting right now, I really would have to work to retrieve that information and to answer that question, or the kind of question you're asking. What I can say is I have an entire chapter on social justice to raise the point, if we really think that social justice should be central or is central to intersectionality, because a lot of people think intersectionality is inherently about social justice, which I don't think. I think that's an argument that has to be constructed. I think it was at one point. It may still be for many people who are in working with intersectional ideas, but to take that for granted would be a mistake, because it could easily be an intersectionality that in fact serves neoliberalism. I see that as very possible. So for me, thinking about social justice as perhaps a break on those tendencies in some way, or which aspects of social justice. I got to a point where I just said, I'm going to have to stop this right now. I can't possibly do the research I need for the book that I just finished. I just couldn't do it in time. But this whole question of social justice, I think, is a big one and an important one. And I think we also need to be prepared for it not meeting the needs of intersectionality. Maybe there's the need for some other ethical concept I talk about this as an ethical concept at the heart of political projects. They aren't just about change mindlessly. There's a reason you want to change it. You want to make it more fair or more democratic or more just or differently something or other. So ethics is at the heart of politics. I did not make that as clear tonight as I usually do. And that's why I've settled on social justice for now. But I'm the kind of worker that takes a step back and looks at all of it from time to time. I just throw it up in the air and see if it still makes sense. Because how we're understanding social justice in 2000 is different than 2010, is different than 2020, because things have happened. So, I mean, historically. All right, so that's one thing. Okay, now, you're making this so difficult with all these questions. I definitely do not want to forget the anger and hope question. I want to finish with the anger and hope. What was in between? Okay. No. I mean, it's a question of just reminding me. It'll come back to me. Do you remember?
There's your question.
Humor. Oh. Well, I'll say a word about humor because I would put it in cultural politics. And I think what's interesting about many groups that have been subordinated or at the bottom is humor is part of their culture. Indigenous populations in the U.S., humor, all these jokes that, it's like, can you joke about this? But black culture in particular has long-standing traditions of humor that in terms of oral culture. And one of them, I would recommend a book that is odd that I've recommended it twice since I've been here. It's called Get Your Ass in the Water and Swim Like Me. Now, I know this may strike you as, what is that? Bruce, I've forgotten his last name. That is the name of the book. It's published by Harvard University Press. Very prestigious. You've heard of them. All right. He didn't print it off in his basement. But what it does, it pulls together black culture, toasts, playing the dozens, all the ways in which oral culture has basically political implications. What do those stories do? And some of them are hilariously funny. The title of the book is taken from a series of toasts that were done when people are drinking and talking, all right, and the day is done and work is over. And the story comes from the Titanic. You familiar with the Titanic? Right, that was the unsinkable ship. And that is often how oppression is presented to us. It is total, it will never sink, it will be forever. And the Titanic was a symbol of Western scientific achievement. And on its maiden voyage, it sank. Now, black people in oral culture took that particular story and created a character called Shine, who was working on the boat. And Shine knew the boat was sinking because he worked in the engine room. But the captain and everybody else who thought it was unsinkable continued on with the fantasy of the Titanic. They refused to get off of it. But Shine jumped off of it and said, I have a way for me to survive, even though he tried to warn them. The ship is sinking, the ship is sinking. And they said, he's just Shine. He doesn't know anything. So when the ship starts sinking, the captain says, Shine, help poor me. I'll give you everything if you help me. Shine, the captain offered Shine money. He offered Shine his daughter. She ran out, white woman on the deck, raised her bloomers. I mean, this is the kind of stuff people would tell while they were drinking. With great fanfare. There are variations of this story that are in this book. And Shine eventually says to the captain, get your ass in the water and swim like me. Which is the name of the book, right? So the whole notion of humor being, it's a release, it's funny, but that particular series of toasts called the Titanic toasts very much is talking about oppositional knowledge. That's how I used to use it in my class, my graduate class, on sociology of knowledge. And I would perform Shine with great flourish. I would really just act it out. So the whole question of humor as a way of just keeping, you just need this in your life. You just cannot be, some of my colleagues, they're just always like, ooh, I just can't be around them all the time. It's just, the negative energy is not good. But, yeah. So humor is much more sophisticated across cultures. And it's something I would look to in terms of what are the stories that black women tell and how do they tell them? And where's the humor in black feminist thought? And I think it's there. I just haven't said a lot about it. I just do it, right? Okay. Oh, she's, all right. That's one. One more. What was? Anger and hope. Anger and hope. Let me just finish up. The question in between, could you come and find me again and let me know what it is? I want to finish with the anger and hope question because I think that is really important. How many of you think I'm angry? Do I strike you as an angry person? I'm all friendly. I'm smiley. And I'm welcoming. I'm well-behaved. I'm humorous. But I am really angry. Now, Audre Lorde was right about anger being something that can propel you. Emotions matter. If you don't care, you're not angry. But the issue with anger is you have to manage it. So anger can be something that tears you up inside, that you tamp down, through drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, addictions of a various sort. For me, I take my anger and I publish. So that's where that came from. And I don't necessarily care whether it gets translated right away or not. I'm always talking to a particular audience when I write, as I do when I'm speaking. But it's coming from a place of saying, this is what I'm going to do with that energy. I'm going to create something, and I'm going to give it as a gift. And however people use that gift is how they use that gift. But at least I'm not carrying that anger this way at this time. But that is one, and I really have written a lot. I've written stuff I forgot I wrote. That's how much I've written. So there's plenty out there to go forth in the world. But the anger and hope, the hope comes from getting to this room. When I wrote Black Feminist Thought, I had no idea I would be here. The Portuguese preface to Black Feminist Thought talks about writing a book for people who weren't even born. How is it that I could write something that would be meaningful now? And I was signing a book this weekend, and this young woman came up to me and she said, I am one of the ones who was not yet born that you were writing to. It was a magical moment. And if I had any doubts about hope, they went away with that conversation. All right? So there's so much evidence, if you look for it, as to why to be hopeful. But not Pollyanna, oh, I'm hopeful, none of that. I mean really working it. Hope in the center of politics. Because my writing is my politics. That's what I picked. I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, but I can do this. Do what you're good at. All right? And maybe a dose of humor would be very nice too. Right. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
These people are party. I'm going to give you a hug too.